Throughout the years, there have been hundreds of courses raced on cyclocross, from places like Roubaix, Rome and Las Vegas in the past, to modern races in Max-Plas, Herentals and Dendermonde. If you're making your way into the sport for the first time, here are 10 courses that you absolutely cannot afford to miss. My scoring system for the following top 10 is based around 3 important factors: the historic value of the race quality, and the uniqueness of the circuits. I will only be including races that are part of one of the 4 major classifications: the World Cup, the SUPERPRESTIGE, X-Trail BADKAMERS Trofee and the ATS Cross. This means that certain tracks that I'm very fond of, such as the Lakewood circuit from the US Nationals in 2019, the BELGIUM in Valkenburg and the old layout of the Essen circuit, will not be part of this list. We start our list in the Netherlands, and you better savour it because it's the only time we're not in Belgium. GIETEN typically functions as the season's opener. It's the first race of the SUPERPRESTIGE and the first round of any competition that actually means anything. What makes GIETEN so good is the ground underneath it. GIETEN is run mostly on sand, with lots of technical descents and fairly difficult running sections through said sand, based on the bank near a local lake. Should it rain, the course turns into an absolute mudfest, which is even better. The course has this weird tendency to both feel like it's looping back on itself and interacts with itself, whilst also not feeling like one of them chemist courses where you're just constantly doing hairpins. All in all, GIETEN is absolutely the best racetrack in the Netherlands right now. Now, hear me out on this one, but the Koppenberg isn't quite in the top tier of racetracks. The course is of course steeped in history and tradition, and it's the first major race of the season. But I don't really like the modern course that much. The old Koppenberg course would quite easily have made number 1 on this list. The flowing descent is absolutely iconic, the start-finish line not on the Koppenberg, made for a much more enjoyable race. The 2014 edition, for example, where Tom Beusen ran away with the victory, was absolutely incredible. The modern Koppenberg course just seems to miss some of the magic the old one had. And I know that's harsh because the old course is embroiled in kind of a land ownership issue, so they can't really race there anymore. But this modern one just isn't quite at the right standard. My main gripe is almost certainly the fact that we finish at top for Koppenberg, which on one hand is absolutely epic, but on the other hand is very much not epic. Due to how difficult the Koppenberg is, it's basically impossible to hold the final sprint up there. The battle at the end is run as soon as you reach the foot of the climb, and it creates this weird 30-second slow burn where you know who's won, but you aren't really getting to celebrate it. When's the last time you remember someone properly celebrating the top of the Koppenberg? It's always just a weak hand because they've got nothing more left. And I think that's a shame, because emotion is everything that we get in sport, and when you don't have the energy to show that emotion anymore, then what's the point? And while the Koppenberg is of course legendary, for these reasons I can't put it near the top of the list, so 9th place it is. It is tradition that on the 1st of January the cyclocross cabal heads to the home of the Cannibal in Baal. Sven Nys is inarguably one of the greatest cyclocross riders of all time, certainly one of its most legendary figures. Sven's race, held in his hometown of Baal on what is nowadays the ground of the Sven Nys Cycling Centre, is generally the day that we're introduced to the new kits for the season, and then we promptly get them so incredibly muddy that they're completely unrecognisable. Baal is quite frankly just an all-around great racetrack. It's muddy, it's chaotic, the atmosphere is always great. The way the course interacts with itself as well really gives it its own character, and that's why it again absolutely deserves to be here. Now again, I feel this one might get some weird looks, but the GP Erik de VLAEMINCK held at Heusden Zolder on the Zolder race circuit is one of 7, in my opinion, nigh on perfect raceways. You know, Zolder isn't difficult in the way that Baal or the Koppenberg is. It's not like a hard race. It's quick, it's pack racing, it's something different and something unique. The descents that form the heart of the Zolder race course are absolutely brilliant as well. The way they look, the way they feel, how they're so hammed in this sort of muddy, sandy drop. Zolder is all around just fascinating and fun. It's a good racetrack. I definitely prefer the old route with the bridge towards the end as opposed to the longer run, because I feel it created a better sense of suspense, if that makes sense. but Zolder nonetheless is absolutely brilliant. We're into the big leagues now. We start with the Moeder der Crossen, the mother of all cross. It's the oldest event, it's got the most editions, including some years where it was held up to 3 times. Overijse is characterised by its long climbs, its technical descents, and just how incredibly hard it is. It's got a winners list as illustrious as any. And that winners list is where my main gripe with this track comes in. I absolutely despise it when elite level cyclocross races go through the likes of a children's playground. It just feels wrong. A rider of the calibre of Wout van Aert, Mathieu van der Poel and Marianne Vos should not be racing through a child's playground. It's wrong. But this is supposed to be elite level sport. It's very much a look the part, be the part kind of issue that I have here. Other than that, Overijse, absolutely legendary. It belongs here, but that one little thing just annoys me so much that it doesn't quite make my top 5. When you say sand, you say Kokzijde. The DUINENCROSS is again a storied, legendary race. It's been on the World Cup for a decade at this point. It's been held since the 1970s. There's so many tales around this track. You're talking about Paul Herreigers giving Richard Groenendaal a pat on the back during the World Championships. You're speaking of Van der Poel overtaking everybody in the race in one lap. You're talking of Sven Nys's final victory in the World Cup. Kokzijde is just truly, completely iconic. It's an unchanged course. The section after the first pits, the sand, the Herreigers down, the Niels Albert down, they're absolutely legendary. I do have a strange tendency to forget Kokzijde exists, and that's the reason it's in 5th place. Quite frankly, I needed something to split these last 5, so this is what I've gone for. From one classic we now go on to another. ASPER-GAVERE has been held since basically the dawn of time, and it is old school cross. The whole course is bumpy, muddy, difficult. Even the pits are on an incline. The flat sections are hellishly bumpy. The start-finish line is barely even paved properly. Racing here is so incredibly difficult that if you can come out of here a winner, you are truly one of the best in the world. For some strange reason, Flanders Classics have decided this year to move Gavere right to the end of the calendar, placing it all the way in February, right at the back end of the season where no one will still be racing. This doesn't make any sense to me, and it could potentially kill one of the classics of the calendar. There's no reason to do this, and I hope they come back to their senses and move it back to where it belongs at the height of the calendar. Where ASPER-GAVERE is old school man versus nature, DIEGEM relies more on a gimmick. It is, however, a bloody good gimmick. DIEGEM is cyclocross's traditional night race, and something about the race held in the Brussels suburbs, one of the more road heavy tracks even, just works with it being at night. The atmosphere, the views, the racing seem to always be absolutely glorious. This isn't to say, of course, that DIEGEM is some kind of historyless race or whatever. It's been going on for 30 years. It was part of the original SUPERPRESTIGE. I genuinely can't place what it is about DIEGEM that I like so much, but it all just comes together in such a great way that I do think this belongs on the podium of best cyclocross races. Where the last 3 races we've talked about have been elder statesmen of the sport, ZONHOVEN is very much the new kid on the block, but the new kid on the block has a hell of a thing going for it. To most people, ZONHOVEN is all about the girl. I mean, the girl is the most legendary bit of imagery you'll see in cyclocross nowadays. The mass dive into the pit on the first lap is the single greatest bit of advert this sport knows. But even after that drop, the climb out of the pit, the second descent, the ridiculous staircase, it all combines so well into this almost coliseum of noise. And then you get the back half of the course, which is still absolutely brilliant as well. It's so tough, it's constant climbing, and the thing as well is it looks gorgeous. It feels almost like a purpose-built racetrack, which is exactly the kind of thing this sport should be going for. It's sad to see the struggling attendances and the struggling finances, quite frankly, for the race in recent years. This course absolutely belongs on the World Cup calendar. It's one of the best racetracks in the world. ZONHOVEN is everything cross should hope to be. So I just hope that it gets to stay. And here is our winner. The CITADELCROSS in Namur is the cross's other modern classic. Despite only being a decade old, I cannot imagine Namur missing from the calendar nowadays. Namur seems to deliver every single year with those iconic races on the Citadel. The climb straight out the start is absolutely legendary, the descent following it even more so arguably. Then you get that massive cobbled climb and then the historically great banked section that is so difficult. The whole thing is absolutely masterful design. Namur is regularly seen as one of, if not the hardest race on the top level calendar, sometimes being compared to a mountain bike course. But that's what makes this course so good, is it's so difficult. A decent chunk of this old circuit used to be used as literally a motocross circuit, which explains why it's so difficult. You know, you're meant to drive up here on a motorbike, not a push bike. Namur is this brilliant combination of old school suffering and more new school technical ability. The circuit just requires you to be absolutely perfect at both. You need to go deep, you need to be able to suffer, but you also need to be technically amongst the best in the world to compete here. Namur is a perfect challenge, it's a perfect test. And to come out of here victorious, you need to be the perfect crosser. So, what did you make of that? Agree? Disagree? Please let me know, I'm curious to see what you think.